So welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I'm joined by inspiring leaders driven by the impact of creating a healthy and sustainable world. And in today's episode, I'm joined by Giovanni Battistini. He's an expert across health, wellness, and nutrition. He's an entrepreneur and innovation champion at heart. Gio, such a pleasure to have you on the show today, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on.
The pleasure is all mine, Simon. Thanks for a kind introduction. Always, nice to hear nice words about you. But I think, you were really, really too kind with
thank you, Gio. Thank you. So let's take it all the way back, Gio. Fascinated. I'm just thinking about, the younger days and, some of the key forces. As you grew up, what were the real values and ideals that helped shape a young Gio?
Okay, that takes me back a few years, more than a few years, but I grew up in Italy. I think both my name and my accent give me away grew up in northern Italy, small university town near Milano, a family of, my parents were both physicians, doctors. So I grew up admiring their strong work ethics. These are the kind of doctors who actually put really the patient and their mission ahead of anything else. So really always very appreciative of that. Very Catholic upbringing. So that shaped a lot some of my values. Although I moved away from religion, I became more of an independent thinker from that perspective. But I think that still resonated with me. Certain strong values of take care of the weakest ones. Think about positive impact. So that's kind of stayed with me, and I think it's always been also very encouraged to understand. Be curious about a lot of things. Science was always, and technology was something I was curious. I was always curious about learning how things work, and that kind of drove me to study electronic engineering, and led me to later to pursue what I've done. So what I've done since then, which is really problem solving, try to see things in a different way, innovate, mostly driven by my curiosity, and slowly actually migrating to a place where it was while at the beginning was more about how cool the technology, how cool the problems to solve were, and get excited about the problem and the solution itself and innovation itself. Later on, it became more interesting in the strategic impact that I could generate also in general, right? There's nothing, there's gotta be a way where you can do good and good well at the same time. And whatever you do is, it's probably a good idea if you try to apply to things that matter to not just to you, but the people around you and, the overall planet, I would say.
Okay, no, that's great. That's great because it's interesting with you because I obviously come across you first at like Firmenich, which was your first job, I think, in the kind of food industry, in the B2B kind of food ingredients industry. And I know you had a really vast kind of background beforehand and all sorts of kind of entrepreneurial kind of activities, as it were, right? So so it's funny, I've always had this lens of you as health and wellness kind of ingredients, but there was so much more beforehand, as it were. So give us a kind of quick rundown, really, I suppose, before Firmenich, really. You talk about the electrical engineering side. How did that kind of manifest itself in your career?
Believe it or not, I started designing sonar systems for the military, Navy, and to find and discover mines. So very, very difficult technological problems to solve. And then I started working on leading edge industrial automation systems and doing a lot of technology. Relocated to the United States for an executive program. Got excited about the US ecosystem and how much could be done with really a mindset that is driving innovation in many different dimensions in this country, and ended up staying for much longer than I would have ever thought. and so that was kind of a shift. And then when I got my green card, I had been an entrepreneur with a large industrial automation group based in Cleveland, ABB. I had been an entrepreneur there because I had started, a new software product line based on a new vision. I always like to, look at things in a different way. So I realized at the time, though, that it was so difficult to drive this type of transformation innovation in a very large companies. And I thought I would give a try with more entrepreneurial innovation. I really wanted to do things in a faster, more agile way. So I took a chance, got my green card, moved to New York, and started the entrepreneurial, caught the entrepreneurial bug for a few years. Did a lot of things during mostly high technology, actually all high technology space. The last big adventure was really an accelerator with U of A, University of Arizona. I was still based in New York, but being there, I was spending at least a week, a month there, where I was hired to actually build this big center for to study and develop technology to serve the lifelong learning mission that the New Science Center had and was building on, and University of Arizona was banking a lot on this vision. And we had an opportunity. I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, AI scientists. They really build a strong team of multidisciplinary team to innovate. We were kind of probably too far ahead of our times. We came out actually with spun off a company that applies certain technology to the learning, facilitating learning on the web, on the World Wide Web, at that point when we went through a nice adventure through that, Firmenich, was through a person whom I admire a lot, who was the president of the flavor division of Firmenich at the time, was crazy enough to approach me, thinking that they wanted to start a totally new business in the space of taste modulation, taking advantage of new science in the space. And they thought they needed somebody with a totally different perspective, how to grow this business and how to manage innovation partners. And of course, I didn't have a clue about the ingredient space and the food ingredient space. But what I had learned at the time was I have been inspired by, the chairman, a renowned scientist, who were the chairman of the University of Arizona project, Peter Eisenberger, who actually gave me, at some point he told me, listen, it's not really about what you know, but it's really about how you learn what you need to know. And he shared with me this piece of advice, because when he said that when he was getting his PhD at Princeton, when he was a young boy, he told me, listen, I was totally overwhelmed by what I had to learn. He was a physicist, right? He became a physicist very well. And once I realized that was what I needed to focus on, that liberated me, and that changed. And I thought that thought stayed with me. And I said, well, I know the process of innovation. I know that I can learn new things, because I had gone through a very transformational project. It had changed so many things, in terms of, type of. So I thought this is the time to really test whether I can do, in this new space. And I knew, again, that it was aligned with my mission of generating impact. And, this is about sugar reduction. This is the big. So we removed a lot of tons of sugar per year from the food system at the time where sugar was emerging as being, I had seen just, I don't know if you remember, there was a very popular video with a lecture by Dr. Robert Lustig on Sugar, the Bitter Truth. It's an hour lecture that I watched when I was deciding to take the job and throw myself into it. And this was, I think, in 2009, the video. So I watched it like a year later, and I realized, what kind of impact this could have given. And I think that video had like more than 20 million views, so it became really popular. But I realized there was something that I didn't know about that I really need to understand, and I think I could generate a strong, a positive impact by, both economically it was a successful story for Firmenich, but also was very successful story, I think, for in general for the food system.
Oh, that's great. And so tell me, how long does it take to be an expert? You join with I mean, it's fascinating, right? So I love that bit of advice. So you join as a curious, observing, you do innovation, innovation, you're joining Firmenich. We're talking about molecules, we're talking about chemistry, we're talking about science, biochemistry, food application. How long does it take to become an expert, Gio?
Well, first of all, I'm an expert on not being an expert. I'm, and actually that gave me a good understanding. So I think what I became an expert on is really understanding, connecting the dots, and asking questions, and also because I'm curious, I like to learn new things. And I like to, spend the time learning at the deeper level if I need to learn at the deeper level. And, keep in mind, again, the advice I already shared, I already shared with you that Peter gave me a long time ago. It's really about how you go after a problem and how you actually learn what you need to learn. And which is something that once you, bring it, you're aware of this, you bring it up to a metacognitive level, right? You understand what you need to know and what you need to ask. And I think I became more of an expert in that space. I also know what it takes to take a technology or innovation to market, because I learned it the tough way. So I guess I became an expert in that. And of course, you need to learn the basics. I had to go back to my books. I need to educate myself or re-educate myself on certain elements. But I also thought that it was important for me to come in with a totally different perspective and get a company to think in a different way so that they could generate the growth that we were able to generate. So I think it was a win-win situation. But again, I don't consider myself an expert on anything, but I'm more of an expert in the process of innovation, and that's what I've been doing for so many years.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And tell me though, at the time, because I mean, it's interesting I read something this today actually in the UK press talking about how the obesity rate in the UK, I saw some awful statistics today in terms of, continued increase in, obesity, and the, looking ahead at the next 10, 15 years, and some of the kind of predictions around that actually. And it just seems like we're fighting a bit of a losing battle in this country. I don't know if it's like this with all Western countries, but it's certainly in the UK very, very topical and top of mind actually. And
yeah, no, I think it's really very sad, and it's really alarming. It's a combination of multiple. The food system is clearly not functional, but it's not just the food system is not functional. The planet has become dysfunctional. The health of a planet. Without the health of a planet, you can't have the health food system, and without a good food system, you cannot have healthy humans, right? So these three, this is talking about three complex systems that interact in a complex way. So you really need to think about, how to approach this, highly complex problem and where to act in order to make the change. I think started from a human metabolism. I think what we learned over the last 10, actually 20 years mostly is being that we were wrong in a lot of assumptions that we made we generated a lot of confusion. No, we were wrong as humans. No, the science got it wrong, where we're starting attacking the problem of the cardiovascular diseases. A lot of people getting sick and dying in the 70s, and attributing that issue to dietary fats. And it was famous study, the seven nation studies that was show the correlation between fat consumption and I believe obesity rate and actually cardiovascular diseases, and the war on fat started. It became popular all over the world because of the removal of the fat and the need for making the food palatable. A lot of sugar was added into the diet. That created clearly a perfect storm for for the public health, right? You got people who got used to. I mean, sugar is quite a cheap ingredient that has a lot of functionality that humans didn't evolve to metabolize in quantities that we are metabolizing today. I think we average use worldwide. I think we are around 100 grams, one hectograms, 100 grams per day average consumption. I mean, if you look at, I think it's higher in the United States and lower in other countries. But if you look at the developed world, that's kind of where we are today. The World Health Organization recommends, two different thresholds. We got 40, 45 grams per day, should be even lower, probably 20, 25 grams per day of added sugar. So we are clearly exploding in sugar consumption. That clearly is a huge problem, right? And that's what, that was kind of what I focus on at Film Initiative. We were able to actually, I was pretty proud of that, is able to, when I left, we're probably removing 200,000 tons of sugar from the food system, affecting probably, at the time, at least 10 million consumers' health, on average. Probably now we are at 600,000 per year, that we should in same program, and affecting probably 30 or more on average, right? If you think about, you take 80 grams, actually 60 grams, for 100 grams, you go back to 40 grams, you probably go back into a healthier state. So that's clearly, but it's just a drop in the ocean, right? Think about it, and I don't think consumers still, understand. There is still a lot of confusion. There is still in the message. The message that was pushed for many years there was a, and now it's totally opposite now. And now, how do you actually fix that? So there is an issue with that. Obesity is growing everywhere. It's not just obesity. You have a plethora of non-communicable diseases that are, the rampant, obviously the metabolic syndrome and obesity, type 2 diabetes, which is correlated with that. You have all the allergy, food intolerance, you have a number of the multiple sclerosis, neurocognitive diseases, and you have Parkinson, Alzheimer's diseases ramping up. There is it's clearly a crisis, right? It's a worldwide crisis that is probably can be reconducted to a number of things. Sugar was clearly an early enemy that that the industry tried to tackle, but it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond. We have evolved to eat in an abundant world where food is abundant, is not the healthiest food because it comes from an agri system that is broken. It comes from, so it lacks fundamental nutrients that are space, but also it's abundant in certain, in certain, and is in certain macronutrients and lacks other nutrients that favor metabolic syndrome. So I'm not a scientist here, but clearly there is an issue here with not just doing the right thing from a supply perspective, but how do we actually, get food is clearly the COVID pandemic, right? Is another big, basically highlighted the problem, right? The people who got, the majority of people who are in serious trouble because of COVID were the people who were, metabolically unhealthy, right? And, cancer is another thing that thrives on people who are metabolically not, not doing, when there is a metabolic ecosystem that is not working properly. So clearly food has become now prominent, and now you have a medical community that is not trained on nutrition at all. And so how do you actually, so there is a lot of things that are coming out that, you're talking about the obesity epidemic. That's definitely a pandemic. That's definitely a problem that is not easy to solve given the complexity of the systems. But I think personally that there are elements where we can act today, where we can generate certain synergies, where I think we can actually change or help consumer feeling more accountable for their own health and more in control of their own health, and help the food system to actually develop products that are also, that are more informed by how consumers actually, what kind of impact, metabolic impact is generating consumers.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think needs to, let's look at a couple of those solutions as well, right? I almost feel like as a consumer, if you take a traditional consumer who's maybe is not a scientist, that's seeing and looking at a lot of the marketing messages that are being told, very conflicting, difficult, challenging
Absolutely.
times as well. So how do we shift away from this problem?
Well, yeah, first of all, clearly there is a little bit more awareness of the responsibility of food in consumers that is growing because of this pandemic of non-communicable diseases, right? That is in turn creating a need for the food companies to deliver against multiple food niches, right? You have we are in the era of the not, right? We have the not company, but we also have the not sugar, the not salt, the not gluten, right? You are trying to eliminate those ingredients that consumers got used to because they know that they have a direct impact on their health. So they understand that what they need to avoid. The problem is that you can't remove anything. You can't eat the carb, right? You gotta, and clearly science is evolving so fast that is generating knowledge that can be put to service, right? So the key question is, how do you get consumer to adopt what the new food, the healthier food, and stick with it, right? And on the other side, how do you get the food system to produce food that is healthier? And it's a and I was scratching my head actually. I've been scratching my head the last few years, and I've always been attracted by an area that is I didn't see growing as fast as I wanted to, because I believe it's an area where if we act on, we can make a big impact. So that's why I built Phenotap. It's really this area that I call cognitive nutrition is really try to give consumers, capitalize on the quantified self movement, right? There's a group of people who who like to solve, they take their health in their own hands and their performance in their own health, and they like to measure how they sleep. I'm wearing an Oura ring, how many steps they do in a day. They monitor the heart rate variability, they monitor a number of things, and they are feeding this and engaging with their doctors and practitioners, try to, and make them understand, and trying to get the attention they deserve in order to take care of their own health. So there is that space. Clearly, we're still at the edges. Innovation always started at the edges. But if you think about, if you give consumers, if you give, people a way for understanding, bringing awareness of their metabolic response to food, all of a sudden now you have a direct correlation between the food that it's not about how much sugar, but it's what the sugar does to you, right? If you monitor the glycemic response on a continuous glucose monitor, now you know what you need to avoid, how you need to eat, maybe how to combine. So there is a behavioral, there is a feedback that has a very behavioral impact on people. I don't know if you notice, but now that the step counter is on every smartphone, you have so many people all of a sudden trying to get themselves to do the 10,000 steps.
10,000 steps a day,
It's a behavioral change. So clearly there is this trend that is, because it's been pushed by technology and is getting more mainstream, right? It's not just about selecting a number of people who want to. So that's a big acknowledgement. I think we need to acknowledge that this is happening. And on the other side, there is technology that can be developed to actually, if developed with the right target in mind, that can help extract and monitor biomarkers that matter, right? And so there is great technology that's being developed by University of California, San Diego, and other labs in the world, but this is one of the best labs in the world to actually develop that, by Professor Joe Wang, that has found a way to develop a non-invasive technology where you actually transdermally can extract biomarkers like glucose or lactate or beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone body, from the skin, from the interstitial fluid, and which is the layer between, the external layer of the skin and your capillary system, and extract the biomarker, these molecules, and measure them through electrochemistry, and send them over to a smartphone or a smartwatch, and being able to visualize. Now, this is happening today with continuous glucose monitors, right? We have Abbott licensing out their technology to companies like Level, January AI, NutriSense, and so on. And they, some people are adopting. I wore one. It just costs a lot of money to do that, because you have to spend north of $300 a month to wear one for if you're not prescribed one. Of course, you have to deal with a needle. The technology is great, and it's being designed with the patient in mind and with a third-party payer system in mind, right? Subsidies in mind. So what I think the opportunity is actually, if we actually develop something that is non-invasive, that is more affordable, engineered in a different way, using this type of technology, might not be as accurate as the microneedle, but might actually get more people to adopt it. And I think that by doing that, you actually if you have a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, or a continuous ketone monitor, which is what we are focusing on, developed that tells you where your ketone level, where your ketosis level is, or where your glucose level is, you have the perfect two sides of a coin to manage a lot of your metabolic health, because you now know whether you're burning fat, whether you're burning glucose. You know how to. You're in control of a diet that sometimes is very complex. If you follow a ketogenic diet, you don't know, how much you have to, how low you have to go with your carbs and high on your fats in order to actually follow, get that. So we think that this will generate a strong impact on one side. On the other side, will generate the data and for food vendors company, the accountability on both sides for consume your own health, but also for the food if you say that this is keto, it has to perform as a keto product. Right? If you say this is low glycemic, it has to perform as a low glycemic index product, right? Your glycemic response. So there is a lot of accountability, but there is a lot of trust as well that you can build between the big food, the brand, and the consumers. And so there is an opportunity there for both to capitalize on this technology. I think that when I see the synergies in market, I believe that there is a big opportunity, and I believe there is a huge potential to unleash incredible growth. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm focusing right now.
It's very exciting. And tell me though, because ketogenic diets and ketones is something I've heard quite a lot about over the last few years. How many people manage their diets through this way? Is it a growing trend, and what are the benefits of it?
Well, if you look at some of the data that I went through before, building the company, you are in the U.S. Right now, the U.S. is a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of this type of trend, and so right now I'm focusing on the U.S. market and knowing and seeing already the signals that this is actually spilling over other, Europe and Asia as well, in some different forms, but getting there. I think the U.S. alone, if you count the diet distribution, if you count the people looking for intermittent fasting, which is also substantial, you do intermittent fasting and your end goal is to generate a number of benefits, right, for metabolism, but you start benefiting from the intermittent fasting when you start being in ketosis. So when your ketone concentration, ketone levels is higher than formally is being established at 500 micromolar. You start producing ketones in a higher than normal concentration, and this happens, by the way, only when you burn fat. When your insulin is very low, your body now is able to tap into your fat tissue, into your adipocytes, and break down the triglycerides, and you get the fatty acids and start doing fat oxidation, and the ketones are produced through the Krebs cycle around when you do that, and you actually are starting feeding vital organs like your brain, which works very well with ketones and alternative fuel, and also with your muscles, right, your heart, your other muscles. So it's a very important alternative fuel that is being used by many of your organs. Now, intermittent fasting, count the ketogenic, all the declination, and count the low carb. So you probably have more than 18 million US adults, probably 20 now, consider the growth. These are data from 2019. You have a keto product market that is growing, north of 5.5% compound annual growth per year. Given, even if the keto diet is a complex diet to follow, and regardless, a lot of people are adopting it. So there is a lot of growth in the space, and it's substantiated with, if you look at the number of clinical trials that are being run on ketosis and the healthy benefit of ketosis, it's an exponential growth. It grew, if you look at the curve, it's really exponential growth. So there is a lot of science behind that, and there are good reasons why we think about that way, because, and I'm an intermittent faster. I fast intermittently, and I do it for prevention, for my health, and that's the one way I can get into ketosis from time to time when I want to. You basically train your body, right, to burn not only the glucose, from the carbs, but that you generate yourself, or burning the fats, which is, and that's how we evolved, right? As human beings, we evolved through period of feeding and period of starvation. And it basically go back to get those metabolic pathway activated in a more in a way that that is more in line with how we evolved so I think a lot of people are recognizing that and they're starting adopting this type of diets because of that.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So what will Phenotap, what's the vision for, I know you're at the early stages of things, but where what's the journey for Phenotap?
So I think the journey has just started. We raised the first phase of a seed round, and we're going through technology validation. We are bringing together two technologies that I licensed from University of California, San Diego, working directly with the lab exclusively on doing this technology validation. We want to start taking to market, and we're going to be if the technology is validated in the next couple of months, as we hope we will, we are going to be on the path of developing the first non-invasive continuous keto monitor that will be affordable, will be a wearable device that you will carry all day long. You replace your disposable component every few days, and will support will be obviously connected to an app on a smartphone, will provide certain key metrics, will also connect and integrate with glucose monitors in order to provide the two sides of the very information on both how your glucose and ketone goes. And so the vision is really to provide consumers with a better way to manage their own diet, right? The complexity of the diet, understanding, being in control, right? Very difficult to go by prescription, count the calories, count the carbs, count the fats, only a few people can do that. But if you know how your body reacts, you can use that as a set point. And whether you want to, be in a carb burning mode or in fat burning mode, you can actually decide, decide yourself depending and what your goals are. So we're going to support this type of behavior and grow from a community that is fairly hyper engaged. And I was at the Metabolic Health Summit in Santa Barbara, and I had a firsthand view on how much passion there is around this community, and how much a sense of pushing for metabolic health driven by a diet that is more aligned with what we evolved with. So it doesn't mean only ketosis, but it means metabolic flexibility. In my view, it means correcting and using actually keto diet or ketosis for fixing or stabilizing chronic conditions. So there is a lot there, but I think the vision goes beyond that, because once you are in that space, you can actually start developing similar technologies for other biomarkers. You can actually come up with a less expensive than today a non-invasive glucose, we call it Glucotap, right? Ketotap is going to be the continuous keto monitoring Glucotap, and then you can Lactotap is another, lactate is another big so there is clearly a vision to expand in order to provide visibility on biomarkers that if you monitor them, you should be able to manage your own wellness and your own diet in a more cognizant way. There is a vision also in delivering value, not just to consumers, but food companies, giving them the opportunity to interact with consumers so that they can prove the performance of the product. And and I think that's it. So it's clearly right. We want to be in a win-win situation where only through that we can generate the impact we want to generate.
Yeah, it sounds exciting, especially that part on the food company side, who no doubt are developing products, and you've got the consumer here and no one really knows how it's working from a metabolic viewpoint. So it's going to provide a level of transparency and understanding, which is, I suppose, personal. these personal markers are going to be, it's very exciting, essentially.
Absolutely. I think there is a huge opportunity for food companies to jump on a bandwagon and have the data that they need in order to improve their own products, but also to prove to consumers that their product performs as they advertise. So I think there is such a lack of trust these days. I've been in obviously in a large food companies, and I also Firmenich they were my clients, and I understand the struggle, right, of protecting a brand trust that is eroding over time because of a lot of the system. Clearly there's been some abuse on one side, but there's also been a lot of very goodwill, but inability to act on the goodwill, and a lot of confusion and the underlying science as well. So a lot of things have created this mess, and I believe that this is one way we can get out of the mess. It's not going to be the only way, but I think it's going to generate enough impact to move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you must be having a lot of fun coming from, the last few roles you've had have been innovation, and there's been innovation within larger companies, much more the intrapreneur, as it were. So how is life now as a startup founder, kind of CEO, and how different are you finding this journey?
I feel like I'm back to where I really like to be, because I've done this in the past, and now with the knowledge that acquired over this many years spent with large corporate and having executive roles and leadership role in these companies, I feel now empowered by the agility you can gain in a more entrepreneurial space, and it's great. It's great. I love my jobs, with big corporate, but I also think that the way you can move in and the type of people you're engaged with when you are outside the corporate environment can be very stimulating and energizing. And I get up every day very excited about what I'm doing, and I can't wait to get started and have conversations, but also have discussion about what the product is going to be, what the business is going to be, talk to investors about your vision. I think I feel very, very much at ease in this type of role, and very excited, passionate about it.
Great, Gio, and I wish you all the very best. I'm sure anything that you put your mind to and dedicate your time to will be a success, and I'm sure it sounds like a wonderful area to kind of address, and it sounds highly innovative, and look forward to seeing it unfold over the next few years. So Gio, listen, I'll let you get back to developing the Phenotap, and thanks so much for joining me on today's show. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Simon. It's been a great honor to be here. Thank you for inviting.